What would you do with 4 years of warning before the next computing revolution? Because that's exactly what we just got. The CEO of Rigetti Computing stated publicly that quantum advantage is about 4 years away, the point where quantum computers start solving real commercial problems that classical systems can't touch. We're talking breakthroughs in drug discovery, material science, financial modeling, security that would take today's supercomputers thousands of years to crack. And when fault-tolerant quantum computers hit the market at scale, we're looking at what experts are calling quantum dominance. Now, McKinsey projects quantum computing will become a $1 trillion sector within 10 years, with roughly $110 billion going directly to hardware and software vendors. But here's what matters. Not all quantum stocks are created equal. Some companies are burning cash trying to build quantum chips from scratch. Others are already profitable, quietly positioning themselves to win whether quantum arrives in 2029 or 2039. And for those new here, this isn't speculation, it's pattern recognition. And the best quantum stocks to buy now aren't the ones making headlines with flashy chip announcements. They're the ones building the infrastructure that quantum can't exist without. Today, I'm breaking down 5 stocks that are already making money from quantum computing. Companies where that $110 billion market creates real stock price leverage. And I'll show you exactly how to calculate what that means for your portfolio. Let's get into it. Stock number 1. IBM. The quantum pioneer with receipts. Ticker IBM. I know what you're thinking. IBM. The legacy tech company? But stay with me, because IBM just announced something that completely changes the quantum computing timeline. Last week, literally as I'm writing this, IBM unveiled 2 new processors at their Quantum Developer Conference. The first is Nighthawk, a 120-qubit chip that's 30% more complex than their previous processor while maintaining the same low error rates. The second is Loon, an experimental chip that demonstrates all the hardware components needed for fault-tolerant quantum computing at scale. Here's why that matters. IBM isn't just building quantum computers. They're building the entire operating system that everyone else runs on. Their Qiskit framework is open source, and over 450,000 developers use it today. AWS integrates it. Microsoft's Azure supports it. IonQ builds on it. IBM basically wrote the programming language for quantum computing before anyone else knew the alphabet. And they've got over 500 corporate clients already using IBM Quantum Cloud. Companies like HSBC, Boeing, Wells Fargo, Bosch. These aren't science experiments. HSBC just used IBM's Heron quantum processor to improve algorithmic bond trading in a real trial. That's actual revenue-generating work being done on quantum systems today. But here's what really caught my attention. IBM just committed $150 billion, not billion, over 5 years to U.S. chip, AI, and quantum research. Their roadmap calls for quantum advantage by the end of 2026 and fully fault-tolerant quantum computing by 2029. That's aggressive. That's expensive. And that's the kind of capital commitment that tells you they're not treating this as a side project. They've also moved production to a 300mm wafer fabrication facility in Albany, New York, that lets them manufacture quantum chips at scale using the same advanced processes that make cutting-edge semiconductors. Nobody else in quantum is operating at that industrial level yet. And for investors looking at the best quantum computing stocks, here's the kicker. IBM stock is reasonably cheap. We're talking a P/E ratio in the 36 to 37 for a company that's positioned to dominate quantum software, quantum hardware, and quantum services. If they hit their 2029 target, this stock could re-rate significantly higher. Now, IBM is also a $286 billion company, so we're not looking at a moonshot 50x. And McKinsey estimates quantum computing could be a $97 billion market by 2035. If IBM captures even 15 to 20% of that, you're looking at a business line that could add another tens of billions to their valuation. Next, Amazon, the hidden disruptor. Ticker AMZN. And this is the one most investors are completely sleeping on. Amazon Web Services launched something earlier this year that didn't get nearly enough attention. The Ocelot quantum chip. This isn't just another quantum processor. It's designed to cut quantum error correction costs by up to 90% and could bring practical quantum computing online up to 5 years faster than previous roadmaps. But here's where Amazon's play gets really clever. AWS Braket, their quantum computing service, already gives you access to 6 different quantum hardware providers. Rigetti, IonQ, D-Wave, Oxford Quantum Circuits. Amazon doesn't care who wins the quantum race because they're running the casino. And get this, every quantum job that runs on Breakit burns hundreds of hours of classical compute for pre-processing and post-processing. Internal AWS data shows classical compute usage is roughly 500 times the quantum processor runtime per job. So even if quantum totally fails as a technology, AWS is still billing for all the infrastructure around it. But that's not it. They just deployed the world's first GB300 supercluster, 4,600 NVIDIA Blackwell GPUs on quantum-grade networking. That's the classical foundation every hybrid quantum workflow will run on for the next decade. Amazon also made waves recently by liquidating a $36.7 million stake in IonQ after previously disclosing it. Some people freaked out about that, but I read it differently. Amazon is staying hardware agnostic. They're not married to one quantum approach. They're building the platform layer that sits above all of them, which is exactly where you want to be as an investor in the best quantum stocks. Plus, Amazon runs the AWS Center for Quantum Computing with Caltech. They're doing fundamental research while simultaneously commercializing quantum through Breakit. That's the same playbook they used with AI. Fund the research, build the tools, then rent access at scale. Now, will quantum move Amazon's stock price next quarter? No. Amazon is a $2 trillion company. But if you're building a position in the best quantum computing stocks for long-term holds, Amazon gives you exposure to quantum upside with zero quantum risk. If it works, AWS becomes the infrastructure backbone. If it doesn't, they've lost essentially nothing. Before I reveal the next quantum stock, show some love in the comments if you're already finding this valuable. And if you're not already subscribed, consider subscribing so you do not miss such important content. Alright, number 3. Microsoft, the quantum marketplace, ticker MSFT. And Microsoft is playing a completely different game than IBM and Amazon. They're not just building infrastructure or running the platform. They're building the entire marketplace. Azure Quantum is live right now. You can log in today and access quantum processors from IonQ, Quantinuum, Rigetti, and Pascal, all the major players. It's just like shopping on Amazon. But Microsoft isn't just renting access to qubits. They're selling outcomes. They're packaging quantum computing as a service the same way they did with cloud computing 15 years ago. And here's where it gets interesting. Microsoft and Quantinuum just demonstrated something huge. 800 times better logical error rates on actual quantum hardware. Not in a simulation. On real qubits. That's the kind of reliability breakthrough that turns quantum from a research curiosity into a commercial product. Plus, Microsoft is one of only 2 companies selected by DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, for the final phase of the Quantum Benchmarking Initiative. That's the U.S. government's program for validating utility-scale quantum computers. Translation: the Pentagon is betting on Microsoft's quantum roadmap. But there's more. Microsoft just opened new quantum research labs in Denmark and Maryland. The Denmark facility is now their largest quantum site globally, and they're collaborating directly with governments and universities to advance topological qubits, a completely different quantum approach that could be more stable than what IBM and Google are building. Their big bet is something called the Majorana 1 chip, which uses exotic physics to create qubits that are inherently less error-prone. If that works, and they're making real progress, Microsoft could leapfrog everyone else in the race to fault-tolerant quantum computing. Now, will quantum move the needle for Microsoft's stock price tomorrow? No. Microsoft is a $4 trillion company. But if you're looking at the best quantum stocks for long-term positioning, Microsoft is building the infrastructure layer that quantum applications will run on, the same way Azure became the backbone for enterprise AI. Microsoft generates $211 billion in annual revenue from everything else. They can afford to play the long game. That's exactly the kind of risk profile you want when you're investing in emerging technology. Alright, so we've covered 3 of the best quantum stocks to buy now. IBM, the quantum pioneer with receipts. Amazon, the hidden disruptor. And Microsoft, the quantum marketplace. But the next 2 are where things get really interesting, because these companies are taking completely different approaches that most investors aren't even aware of yet. One is building the quantum equivalent of the App Store, and the other is solving the single biggest problem holding quantum back. We'll get to those in a second. But first, NVIDIA, ticker symbol NVDA. Our stock number 4 is the stealth quantum monopoly. Before you roll your eyes thinking, everyone already knows about NVIDIA, hear me out, because what's happening here is completely flying under the radar. Most people see NVIDIA as the AI chip company, the GPU king, the stock that turned early investors into millionaires during the ChatGPT boom. But what almost nobody is paying attention to is NVIDIA's move into quantum computing, and it might be the smartest play in the entire sector. Because here's the thing everyone's getting wrong. Quantum computers don't replace GPUs. They multiply the demand for them. Every quantum experiment, whether it's from IBM, Google, or some startup in a garage, requires massive classical computing power running alongside it. Simulation, error correction, control systems, and post-processing. All of that runs on GPUs. And NVIDIA just announced something at their GTC conference in Washington, D.C. that basically makes them the unavoidable toll booth for the entire quantum industry. It's called NVQLink. Think of it as the Rosetta Stone connecting quantum processors to classical supercomputers. It's an open architecture that allows quantum computing units, QPUs, to plug directly into GPU infrastructure with microsecond latency. And here's the kicker. 17 quantum hardware companies are already integrating it. IonQ, Rigetti, Quantinuum, Atom Computing. Basically everyone building quantum computers is now dependent on NVIDIA's platform. But it gets better. NVIDIA's venture arm, NVentures, has been quietly investing in quantum startups across every major hardware approach. Superconducting qubits, trapped ions, photonic systems. They're not betting on one quantum technology winning. They're making sure that whoever wins needs NVIDIA to function. They've also got CU Quantum, their quantum simulation toolkit that accelerates circuit testing by 100x on standard GPUs. Before companies ever touch real quantum hardware, they prototype on NVIDIA's systems. Then there's CUDA-Q, the programming layer that lets developers write code once and run it across CPUs, GPUs, and multiple quantum processors. It's becoming the default language for hybrid quantum computing. And let me hit you with this stat. NVIDIA just reported $300 billion in chip orders over the next 5 quarters. That's not all quantum, obviously. Most of it is AI. But every quantum lab, every research institution, every company building quantum systems is buying NVIDIA GPUs to support their work. So here's the beautiful part about NVIDIA as one of the best quantum computing stocks. Whether quantum arrives in 4 years or gets delayed to 2035, NVIDIA still wins. Every stage of quantum development, design, simulation, error correction, post-processing, runs on their GPUs. They're selling infrastructure to an industry that literally cannot function without them. And finally, number 5. Google, or technically Alphabet, the algorithm advantage. Ticker GOOGL. Google just did something that should have investors paying very close attention. They announced a new algorithm called Quantum Echoes that ran 13,000 times faster than classical software for specific tasks. Not theoretically could. Actually did. That's not just a hardware flex. That's algorithmic superiority. And in computing, algorithms age like wine. The best ones compound their advantage for decades. But let's back up. Google's Willow chip, which they unveiled last December, demonstrated something called below-threshold error correction. That means their logical qubits actually get better as they scale up, not worse. Every other quantum system degrades as you add more qubits. Google's improves. That's the kind of fundamental breakthrough that changes the entire trajectory of the technology. And here's what people are missing. Google isn't just building quantum computers. They're commercializing the research through a spin-out company called Sandbox AQ. This company just raised $450 million with backing from Google and NVIDIA. What does Sandbox do? It sells post-quantum security and AI-driven simulation tools today. Not in 5 years, today. So you're getting 2 bets in one. Plus, Google used over 1,000 NVIDIA H100 GPUs to simulate a 40-qubit system recently. That's them stress-testing quantum at scale using classical infrastructure. Exactly the hybrid approach that's going to define the next decade of quantum development. Alright, so let's zoom out for a second and talk about what this all means. You've got 5 companies, IBM, Amazon, Microsoft, NVIDIA, and Google, that are approaching quantum from completely different angles. IBM's building the full stack. Amazon's running the platform. Microsoft's building the marketplace. NVIDIA's selling the GPUs everyone needs. And Google's chasing algorithmic breakthroughs. But here's what they all have in common. They're already making money. Unlike pure-play quantum startups that are burning cash and hoping to survive until quantum works, These 5 companies have revenue, profits, and the ability to fund quantum research for decades if necessary. And when you look at that $110 billion market that's getting carved up over the next 10 years, these are the companies positioned to take the biggest slices. Because even if quantum arrives slower than expected, they win. They're selling infrastructure to each other, to governments, to enterprises, and the revenue is flowing today. Now, are these the only quantum stocks worth watching? No. There are pure plays like IonQ, Rigetti, D-Wave that could absolutely explode if they nail their technology roadmaps. But those are higher risk, higher reward bets. What I've shown you today are the best quantum stocks for investors who want exposure to quantum's upside without betting their portfolio on a single technical breakthrough. And if quantum delivers on even half of what's being promised, drug discovery, climate modeling, financial optimization, material science, we're looking at a decade-long bull run that could rival what we just saw with AI. The 4-year clock is ticking. These are the best quantum computing stocks to position yourself before that window closes. So that's the breakdown of the 5 best quantum stocks to buy now. As always, do your own research, and I'll see you there. Here are some keywords you can find this video again. Best quantum stocks to buy now. Best quantum computing stocks to buy now. Best quantum stocks. Best AI stocks to buy now. Best quantum computing stocks. Best quantum stocks to buy now. Best quantum computing stocks to buy now. Best quantum stocks. Best AI stocks to buy now. Best quantum computing stocks. Best quantum stocks to buy now. Best quantum computing stocks to buy now. Best quantum stocks. Best quantum computing stocks. Best AI stocks to buy now.